Hello, everybody. This is Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 105.3, broadcasting out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana, but also on the UPRN website, cable television, Roku, X, Facebook, YouTube, and other internet platforms. And of course, tonight I'm back in France for a couple of more weeks. Going to do my last tour as I do Mary Magdalene Sacred Sites tours. It's kind of my fun semi profession. And it's a beautiful rainy night on this eclipse night. No moon watching for me. And it's just really interesting with eclipse in general because a lot of people really look at it like, oh, all of these bad things happen because everything's magnified. And I just really invite you to the possibility that everything that you would like to create, this is a good time to magnify your intentions, your dreams, your heart's desire, and just say, yeah, let's just celebrate my life and what would I like to do next. This is a great time to dream, great time to get clear about what you would like to create. Because this is about energy, it's about intensity, and about a new aspect of the energy with the eclipse happening, the moon and sun interacting so directly. So it can just bring in new nuances in. So that's just great food for thought there to put this up. Do not fear energy. It's just energy, and you have every privilege to direct it in any way, shape, or form. So I wanted to bring on our guest today, Krishna Rose. So here she comes. Hey, Krishna.
Hello, sweetie. Hello, everyone.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. How are you?
Oh, good, good, good. I mean, when I look at you, I go, I think your hair needs to be a little more red like Mary Magdalene's. If I'm looking at you like, don't I know her
I love
someplace?
I actually love my hair when it's red, but my husband doesn't like red hair, so I dye it these
Oh,
colors.
he's got to get over it, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Krishna Rose has been on my show once before, and she has written. It's more like an epic novel, and an epic means that just in case you, at least how I see it, and I've understand in literature that if you have an epic, it means that you really tell a story of the times, and it eclipses not only the characters but all of these aspects of what it was like to live in that time, in which your book, Woman in Red, does that. I see it as an epic novel about Mary Magdalene and Jesus.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So it's got a lot there to go on it, and we've the last interview we did, we really spent a lot of time with that book, and maybe just approach it a little bit differently, and just to make it a little more personal.
Hmm.
I mean, what got you interested in Mary Magdalene in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, to go back to my early life, I remember being 3 years old and my nanny taking me to a church for the first time, where I stood in front of one of those big crosses with Jesus on the cross. And I just remember already at a very early age being very moved to my core. And my mum was working in a jewelry shop, and I was literally putting little Jesuses on the cross in boxes, that were going to be brooches for people or pendants for people to wear. So from a very young age, I had this love for Jesus, um, that didn't feel religious. It felt
Hmm.
more personal, perhaps. So then, when I was in my early 20s, The Last Temptation of Christ came out,
Oh,
which
what a
was
wonderful movie.
an amazing movie, and I must have watched it. I probably watched it 50 times. Um,
Only 10, only 10 for me.
I mean, I was a bit obsessive. Me and my two friends from England, we all obsessed with watching this film together. So whenever we got together, we'd put it on, and we always got something new out of it. But the concept of Mary Magdalene marrying him and him having a life in the south of France, and the hinting that there was more to this story than was being told. And then couple that with me having been taken to the Jesus tomb when I was 8 years old in Srinagar, Kashmir, where I remember having the thought, I'm going to figure out why he's here. Why does nobody know that Jesus is buried here? And didn't he float off on a cloud? So I think already from like 8 years old, I had it in my mind that I was going to be an investigative journalist and try to figure out what happened. But when I watched this movie, The Last Temptation of Christ, and I thought about, for example, I thought about how she bathed his feet and wiped with her hair and wept tears, how she anointed him, and this happened twice. So when I researched the history of uh, the rituals of marriage for ancient Judea for the time period of Christ, what came up was that there were two weddings. The first, the woman would bathe and anoint the feet and cry on the feet and wipe with the hair, wash the feet with the hair. And that was a bridal ritual. So I suddenly realized, wow, like what I'm watching in this movie, Mary Magdalene weeping on Jesus, she's marrying him. And then when she does it the second time, you don't get to perform the second rite of marriage unless you're with child. So
Mm,
only if the wife has begotten a child to her womb does the second marriage rite happen. And in the New Testament, it's noted that she did this ritual twice. So I was very
wow.
intrigued, and I just knew I felt a burning in my bones, in my blood, that I had to get to the bottom of the story and I had to make right her wrong. It was like my life mission to
Hmm.
to rewrite history and tell the real story, because fake news has been around a very long time.
Yeah. When you tell that story, it really puts a lot of emphasis on the feet and how important they were. And if you think of
Mm.
anybody during that time, the feet were under a lot of stress. They were, of course, on sandals or you're barefoot and you're on the ground. They were
Mm.
like walking along in a very parched earth that was,
Yes.
not
Hard.
comfortable. And
Yes.
you had to protect them. They were probably one of the most vulnerable things that
Mm.
people had to deal with. And so
Yeah.
therefore there must have been some rituals about the preciousness and importance of them is just thrown in there. It's just, what I like
Yeah.
about you is not only have you done a lot of studying, but you're just you're dancing on the intuitive aspect about it,
Yes.
which I appreciate
The
because
two the two have to
I,
meet.
I never got that out of that movie. I just loved Harvey Keitel
Oh.
and William Dafoe. Uh,
Oh, he was amazing.
yeah, who
Well,
could
the
be?
feet is very interesting because actually in India, we worship people's feet. When somebody comes to your house, you touch their feet. You bow down and touch their
Mm,
feet. If a guest comes to your house, you bathe their feet. So we know Jesus bathed his disciples' feet. He washed people's feet when they came to visit with him. Um, and it's actually a sign of humility, is what it is. It's a sign of humility to bathe somebody else's feet, that you put them above yourself.
yeah, well, it's probably one of the most. Probably people have all of these cracks and sores and all of these things on your feet, and You may not be real
Yes,
proud of that if you're
exactly.
like roaming around, and for somebody to be revealed to somebody like a highly evolved person, it's just like it is a
Mm.
vulnerability uh,
It
with
is,
that.
and imagine how great people felt getting their feet tenderly bathed and washed and cared for and revered. Imagine how a poor person off the street would feel, or a leper would feel that someone like Christ has come and is bathing his feet, bathing their feet and anointing their feet with oils. I mean, I think it's the most glorious gift that you can give to another person. It raises them up. And
Yes.
it's actually something that I used to run a women's circle here once a month, the full moon circle, and I always bathed the ladies' feet and then anointed their feet with oils at some point in the evening. And it just felt very beautiful to step into their world.
Indeed. And it's something that we need to really pay attention to today, of how we can bring that forth. uh, Another Magdalene book, Cynthia Bourgeois' book on Mary Magdalene. It's more of a psychological journey in some ways, but she really talks
Mm,
about that you give a part of your heart to another person. But she describes anointing exercises with that, and there's just so many levels with that.
mm,
I just
mm,
throw that example out, but what is really itching inside of me, and we talked about this before, but I want to bring it up again, in your Woman in Red book, is
mm,
how Jesus had to tend with like spikes through his feet, and that they would not heal until he got to Kashmir.
mm.
And what, tremendous symbolism that is, that he had to
Yeah,
carry
actually,
that pain for so
for the
long. I
rest of
mean,
his life. No, for the rest
yeah,
of his life. He was apparently a cripple all the way into the rest of his life. His feet would seep blood and pus every day. They had to bathe and put fresh poultices and wrap with fresh bandages every day. Because if you think about it, all of your weight of your body is on your feet.
yeah.
And they, like
But
you say, they walk with little flat sandals, and
and
yeah, go
that's the
ahead.
practical side. What do you think the symbolic side of that would be, of a man that represented the ending of a new
Mm,
era or an old era? And then, of course,
yeah.
the Romans and the
Mm,
Piscean Age were coming in. I always see him as the representative of that, of old and new coming in. Any ideas of
mm.
symbolic juiciness of that theory?
I th I I feel like symbolically, because I've meditated on this subject a lot, because people always say, why didn't he heal himself? Well,
Ah,
healers often don't heal themselves. Healers don't heal themselves, they heal others. And Christ was the embodiment of compassion unto others, not necessarily unto himself. And I believe that he felt like this was his cross to bear, literally. The
mm,
crucifixion stayed with him every day of his life until he died and left that body. I don't
wow.
think that he had even one day where that crucifixion wasn't with him as a scarring memory. I think it must have broken his heart. My intuition told me as I was writing the book that it broke his heart that human beings could be this cruel, that he couldn't even understand how humans could wish this upon another human, especially someone as loving and kind as he was. So it shows that the cruelty of mankind in a way.
It does, and he carried that as in a way of forgiveness, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that shadow was there, and at the same time, that
Mm,
was maybe his challenge, is to go beyond that.
yeah.
and
Yeah.
and as Mary, as in your book, was she was a witness to all of this, and
Yeah.
so, as the Doobie Brothers say, taking it to the streets by healing other people and helping other people with, while all of
Mm,
that was going on. What
yes.
kind of
Very, very
strength is
difficult.
that?
It's indomitable strength, like a mountain.
Mm.
She was definitely his equal.
Yeah, yeah. It's to be witness to that. And yet, why did people come? And you keep bringing this up in your book. It's like they came because of this boundless love.
That's exactly right. Love is the right word. Is that when somebody walks the earth and they want nothing for themselves, they just want to lift others up and raise them up and help them. People are interested in that. People want that because everybody's suffering and everyone is lonely and everyone's so filled with trauma and health issues and mental health issues. And I think never, I think we're at a time now, like then, like 2000 years ago, where we need people like Christ or Christ like beings or Magdalene like beings walking on the earth. So, just like how he inspired all of the disciples and his brethren to go and lay hands on people and feed them and love them and give generosity with your words to speak to preach to people about the power of love and the power of divine love. And he told us 2000 years to do this. So now I'm saying we should be doing that now because we
Yeah,
we all need to step up to we all need to step up our game
yeah.
to that level.
If it's not washing their feet, it's other things that are more applicable to this time. Our feet are
Yes.
much better protected these
Yeah,
days.
sure.
Uh, but it is that it's there's I think there's thousands and thousands of us in that you know um, consciousness,
Giving spirit, yes. We
giving
have this giving
spirit.
spirit. Mhm.
Yes, indeed. And since this is a Magdalene show, we're talking about Jesus is such an intriguing type of fellow,
He really is, yes.
as is Mary Magdalene, with that because she held that, but everybody has so many stories, and as
Mm.
one and so maybe we need to start with some of the stories about what her beginnings were, where she came from.
Mm.
How did she meet this dude named Jesus?
Well, it's my firm belief that because she was born as a princess in the lineage of Benjamin, and her mother died giving birth to her. Her father raised her and Lazarus and Martha in the town of Bethany. They had a
Hmm.
family home in Migdal, which we now know as Magdala, which is by the Sea of Galilee. And during summer vacations, they would go to the Sea of Galilee for their holiday, during summer. And I firmly believe that Mother Mary would bring Christ there, and Elizabeth brought John there. I think that they all grew up together. I have a very strong feeling because the lineage of Benjamin and David were extremely close. They interbred. So they knew each other. They were very enmeshed because they were ancient royal bloodlines. So
Yeah.
I believe Magdalene knew Jesus and John like from the beginning of her life, and they would have been betrothed very young because they interbred. Those families interbred.
Hmm.
But when Jesus went off to India at age 13 after his bar mitzvah, nobody knew whether he was going to come back or not, or when he would come back or not. So at
That
that time,
that's kind of a sign of the
that's
times, you know.
yeah. I mean, he
You
was that kind of a
know.
character. Like you never knew what he was going to do next.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I think there's a vulnerability in his character and thinking of a teenager or a child that was so
Mm.
opened in spirit. You were
But
you you
she
you
was
you
she
went
was
on your
also very,
emotions.
but she was also so she was his equal in every way. I mean, he was her teacher, but once once he revealed these things to her, she too became a master. She was the master of the women, and that went on until the day she died. People would climb up the mountain to come see her in the cave, to come for healing,
Mm,
to come for instruction. So I love the story of how when Jesus's side was pierced with the sword,
yeah.
that Roman soldier later came to the south of France and came to the cave to see Mary Magdalene to beg forgiveness for having killed her husband. He didn't know that Jesus was still alive. He thought that he had killed him. So he came before Magdalene, and Magdalene was, forgiving and blessing him, but he had no idea. So imagine the shock he had when he found out that he went on to live. He's still alive now.
And
Yeah.
that's the story of Maximus, right? Is what you're talking about.
No, Maximus was their friend.
Okay,
Long,
gotcha.
Longinus Gaius was his name. That was the
Okay,
soldier.
all right, gotcha. All
Yeah.
right, all
But
right.
he came to the south of France to come see her as well, for instruction.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, it's I've read a lot of books on this, or they keep popping up. And one young woman, Sophie Strand, uh,
Mm.
the the Madonna Secret, she really describes Mary Magdalene as kind of a wild woman in ways in that she would spend hours outside communing with the wind and the land and the stars and all of
Yeah.
these things. She was just like she had such an intense hunger that she couldn't live a normal life.
Yeah. I can relate to that.
Does that sound like you a little bit?
I mean, yeah, I can relate to that very much so. I think she probably was a little bit of a wild woman. I mean, she was certainly rebellious, and she didn't like to succumb to laws laid down by men.
Mm,
She was very influenced, like Jesus, very influenced by the Therapeutae, who, even though they had many laws, the laws encompassed women being great. They revered women. So it's not like the Essene Brotherhood. The Essene Brotherhood was pretty down on women. It's a male dominated religion. So, the women aren't really accepted or revered, or they're not allowed to teach, they're not allowed to
hmm.
speak. They're kind of kept aside. So when people say that Jesus was an Essene, I say absolutely not. There's no way. He couldn't have been an Essene. He had to have been a Therapeutae, because the Therapeutae was a specific branch of the Essenes where they revered women and encouraged the women to heal and preach. They saw
Yeah.
women as their equals. So when Mother Mary fled Jerusalem, when Jesus was a child, she fled to this area of Scetis where the Therapeutae are up in the mountains of Alexandria. So it makes sense to me that Jesus is a Therapeutae, not an Essene.
Okay. And Mary Magdalene would have been in that group as well. Did I
She would have
understand you
been,
correct?
yeah, she would have been influenced. Well, she came to the Therapeutae with Christ after the resurrection. The
Okay.
first place,
Okay.
the first place that they went to after the resurrection was to Scetis. They fled to the mountains of Alexandria because no one would know that they were there, and they needed to save his life. He was if you don't mind me coining the expression, he was a mess. He was very in and out. He was not in his body. It was touch and go whether he was going to survive. He'd lost a lot of blood, and he had been whipped and starved and dehydrated and all of the above. He'd been through death and come back to life. So you can imagine how harrowing all of that must have been for him. So they went to the Therapeutae because they have all these healers who know the art of poultices and herbs. So they stayed there for 1 year just to let him recover sufficiently that they could get on a boat and go to the south of France. And that
Wow.
was where she gave birth to her firstborn son,
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus's child.
Not Sarah, but James?
Yeah, no, not Sarah. No, Jude.
Jude. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So what do you think, you know, I love the theory that, well, if the Romans are looking for you and they would want the son because they're afraid that, the, the, the son of God has a son and
Mhm.
we got to kill him soon because he might create a riot and uh, destroy our society in Israel. Uh,
Mhm.
do you kind of agree with those type of thinkings of why they would go to France, or were there other reasons why they would go?
Abs- I think it was many reasons. I think Joseph of Arimathea was the main reason why they came to the south of France because, Joseph was very well traveled. He was a very wealthy tin miner. I personally believe that he was the uncle of Mary Magdalene. That's just my own, I don't have any evidence for that. It's just a feeling that I had when I was
Mm-hmm.
writing the book, because he was very involved in Magdalene's life for the rest of her life, and Jesus too. But he was a very wealthy tin miner and he had a whole fleet of ships. So that it would make sense to leave Judea via ship and go to an area that was safe. And in the south of France at that time, there were hundreds of Jewish communities, already functioning,
Wow.
because all of the Jews that yeah, all the Jews that fled Judea back in the day when the Romans infiltrated, they came to the south of France. They all went there because the climate is very similar to Jerusalem. It's dry, it's hot, it's seasonal, and they can grow. It's very fertile land. It's got mountains and water. It's got everything. So I believe that it was quite intentional, and I think it was Joseph of Arimathea who arranged for them to go to this area of the south of France. And Maxime was where they landed. Of course, it wasn't called Saint Maxime. It was named Maxime after Maximus, who was, uh, like Joseph of Arimathea's right hand man, if you like.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Well, that's all so interesting. Do you feel
Mm.
like um, they landed at Marie de la Mer? Kind of like, one of the
Yes.
French legends is that, of course, they were on a boat. The rudder was broken by
Mm.
the Romans, and they were shoved out to sea to drift and hopefully die. It would have been
Mm.
a good thing. I mean, that's one of the French legends that I've heard here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily believe that the Romans had nothing to do with them getting on the ship and leaving at all. They didn't break their mast or anything like that because they were escaping. They were
Mm.
incognito. They had smeared their body with sand and they put on the cloth of beggars so that they
Oh,
wouldn't be
wow.
recognized. Yeah, and of course, Jesus was very weak, and he had his crucifixion wounds, so they had to hide all of that. And
Yeah.
then they took the boat ride, and on the boat ride there was a very big storm. Apparently, according to the legends, there was a very big storm, and the storm was what broke the mast. But
Oh, wow.
Jesus got up and calmed the storm. So then they arrived at Marie de la Mer, and this was the initial place that they landed, and from there they would have been taken inland where the Essenes and Therapeutae and Jewish communities were already living. It was more inland.
Hmm.
But my
Okay.
personal feeling my personal feeling from all of the research is that Mary Magdalene has a lot to do with the Rennes-le-Château region. And it's I
Hmm.
think I think it's a lot I think it's a lot deeper than only her body having been buried there. I think that she lived in that area for a while.
I agree. And let's continue that train of thought. And it's intermission time, and I need to tell everybody that you are listening to Krishna Rose, author of uh, Woman in Red, and you're also on Becoming Quantum Conscious. And my name is Bart Sharp, and this is United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 105.3 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. If you have questions for Krishna, please ask them. I think I got the private chat or comments up. Haven't heard anybody chime in yet. Quite surprising. Um, and you can hear this show on the UPR and website, YouTube, Facebook, X, and Roku. And so, you know, there's all of these stories, and it's always great to hear different spins on all of this. Um,
Mhm.
and, one of the things that was brought up on one of the shows by Catherine de Courcy is that it was only natural or logical that the Cathars were the people that really took the teachings of Magdalene and Jesus and brought that on. But also, it
Mhm.
tells that story that Magdalene did live in the area of Rennes Chateau or Rennes Bon or around Bugarash. There's all of these different stories with that. When you come to the land, you kind of get
Mhm.
the reason why, because it's highly magical. It's ancient. Uh,
It is. It is.
yeah. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when I first began researching and writing specifically, I really didn't know what direction the book was going to go in. I was just the scribe, if you like. I was the empty vessel allowing my hands to type the story, but I kept getting this intuition that she moved further into southwest France towards Rennes-le-Château, because the Jewish communities, they have problems, and they have politics like human beings do. And
Mm-hmm.
I think she wanted respite from all of it. She didn't want to be known, she didn't want to be seen, she wasn't into fame, she wasn't into everybody knowing who she was. She wanted to live a quiet life in the countryside, raise her children, and then practice her spiritual life, and then have her ministry where they would go into the towns and they would feed people and they would heal people and they would preach.
Mm.
So my personal feeling is that she definitely lived in this area around Rennes-le-Château. And I think that they built the tunnels that are underneath Rennes-le-Château. There's many tunnels that have been built, and they built their new
There are.
Jerusalem there. That's
Mm.
my feeling, is they built their new Jerusalem there. They had their treasures that they brought out of Jerusalem from the temple. I think that they may even have brought the Ark of the Covenant with them on the ship. I have a feeling that they did.
But
Mother Mary's father was actually one of the main guards for the Ark of the Covenant in the temple.
mm,
So when they fled, it makes sense that they would have taken this. The other thing that they took, the other treasure that they took, which astounded me, is the rock um, that belonged to Abraham, that his grandson used as a pillow. So he was sleeping on this pillow and having dreams where, the gods were coming up and down the staircase, from heaven down, Jacob's ladder, if you like. And he saw that this, the comings and goings from heaven. And he was also shown that this rock was actually worshipable as God himself. So he was told by the angels how to worship this stone properly. And this stone came from India. It's called a Shalagram Shila. It's a black stone. And it's the only stone of its kind in the world. And it comes from very high up in the Himalayas. And it's a worshipable stone where you can see that this stone could be God incarnate. So
so can you say the name of that stone again? This is very intriguing.
it's called a Shalagram Shila. And actually, what happened was that stone came out of Jerusalem, was brought to France. The Knights Templar protected it. But when the war happened with the Muslims, and the Christians, the Muslims won the stone in the war. And that is the stone that they all walk around in Mecca.
Okay.
Isn't that
Wow.
amazing?
My
Yes.
body is riveting when you say that. Now, just
Yes.
to add to the Renly Chateau story in the caves, there's,
Yes.
of course, there's a cave entrance below the church, and that's well known, and it's kind of locked.
Mm,
Only certain people can go into that. And
mm-hmm.
there's also residences that have openings to the cave.
Yeah.
And I was privileged enough to go stand at one.
Mm.
And my God, the energy coming out of that cave uh,
Yeah.
was phenomenal. Uh,
Yeah.
the whole mountaintop uh, has a very important purpose, but the cave,
Mm,
it feels like the cave or the caves that go down to the lower parts of the this huge mountain hill, so to speak,
mm-hmm.
bring up a huge vibration. That's lots of things are
Yes.
connected to it. It goes into lots of
Yes.
dimensions and realities. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it is a beacon, and I think that's why the
Yeah.
Templars were cherishing it, because they protected the Magdalene consciousness. That was one of their
Well, they
jobs.
were
That was
protecting
important to them.
Magdalene. They were protecting Magdalene herself. They were protecting Mary Magdalene's body, which was intact and kept at Rennes-le-Château underneath the altar in a cave. And when Saunière discovered Mary Magdalene's body, along with the artifacts and scrolls and gold and all these things, he knew that he'd come across something dangerous, because the scrolls were
To say the least.
the scrolls were proving that Jesus and Magdalene were married and had children, and they showed a whole bloodline lineage that had been protected by the Knights Templars. So they were very much involved with this area. They were protecting
Mm,
the treasure of Magdalene's body along with the treasures of the family. They were protecting the bloodline themselves. So this area is steeped with that incredible history. And, this was the primary reason why the Pope and King Philip ordered the murder of the Cathars, was to wipe out knowledge of Jesus's marriage to Mary Magdalene and knowledge of their children. Because if you think of you have to think of the messianic lineage as a throne. It gives you domination over all humankind. This is more than being a king or a queen. It's a
yeah,
messianic throne. And the Vatican stole that for themselves, and they didn't want anyone else to take it away from them. They wanted total control over the Jesus narrative. And how
yeah,
they did that was by massacring 5 million people who believed that Magdalene and Jesus were married and had children. And they did it because they didn't want to give up their messianic throne that they had stolen from Christ. But I think it's astounding that this information has even lasted the last 2,000 years, and that we're able to even have a discussion. When I think about how many people, how many hundreds of thousands of people died for this
yes, yeah,
story to last 2,000 years, there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who died to protect this story, to protect Mary Magdalene. So that brings me to another story, because there's been a lot of discussion in the group on Facebook about the Santa Baume, the cave, and also about the church where Magdalene's skull is held,
yes,
apparently.
yes. I wanted to
So
bring up that topic. So
yeah,
let's proceed.
yes. So what I want to say is that there's no way that that skull can be Mary Magdalene's skull, and I'll tell you why. Because Mary Magdalene is hailed as a queen amongst the Knights Templar. Her body was revered and protected, intact. There's no way anyone was taking that head off of her body and placing
Mm,
it in a church. It would never have happened. If somebody wanted to revere Magdalene, they would have taken the whole body and placed her in a glass casket. They would never remove the head of their queen to put on display like that. It's very garish, and we
It would
know
be,
that. Mm,
well, it would be garish to separate the head from the body
yes,
and divvy up
no
the
one would have done
parts.
that. No one would have
Uh,
done it. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Not even
yeah.
Not even the Vatican would have done it. But these churches, if you go back in history, these early Catholic churches, they were known for doing this. They were known for saying this is the holy blood of Christ and it's sheep's blood when it's tested. That
Mm,
these bones belong to this revered
yeah.
saint, and it's just a pauper of the street. That
So,
they did it to bring pilgrims to their churches so they would have money and followers and all of that.
of course, of course. And at the same time, there's, there's another story with this, and I'll just throw this in
Yeah,
there, that
yeah.
it wasn't Mary Magdalene that stayed in that cave at
Mm,
St. Baum,
mm,
but Mary the Egyptian, who was a bona fide holy woman herself and a former prostitute. I just wondered
mm.
if you had any thoughts about that or other thoughts about, well, whose skull is that
I
in
think
St. Baum?
I think the skull could be anyone's skull, and I think that they put it in there to bring pilgrims and money to the church. I think that the church during that period, especially when her skull was first placed on the altar for reveration, at that time specifically, the church was quite renowned for bringing in false idols
Mhm.
to worship. So I don't believe it's Mary Magdalene. There's not even an inch of me that believes that that's Mary Magdalene. Her body's intact and it's at Rennes-le-Château, somewhere in the grounds of Rennes-le-Château, just like Berenger Saunière depicts in his church. You see, if you look very carefully at the backgrounds and how he placed the mounds and the way they're all looking at the grave, and there's so many clues in that church that he found her body under that altar and then reburied her along with her treasures somewhere in the cave systems
Mm.
down below Rennes-le-Château. Now, I did hear from somebody who knows Ben Hammock quite well, who was the one who exposed the tomb long time ago. He was ultimately ridiculed, but it seems like he took the ridicule to protect the cave. He was the one who came out and said the cave is fake. It was all fake. The tomb is fake. Her body's not there. But the reason why he did it was to protect the tomb because too many people were coming down to France looking for the cave, looking for the evidence, and it was putting their job of protecting her in jeopardy. So he said it's a fake thing. So what I'm hearing is that the Priory of Sion is working together with Ben Hammer and a small team of people right now to get her body out of this cave very carefully. It's in a half broken cave where the tunnel leading into the cave has collapsed and there's water running in one part of the cave. So the tunnel systems, I mean. So they're having a hard time figuring out how they can get her body out of this cave without it collapsing the entire structure. So it's very involved, and apparently there's a whole team of people involved with that right now. So I believe wholeheartedly that she's at Rennes-le-Château. The energy at Rennes-le-Château, this energy that you're talking about, it's Mary Magdalene. It's her energy. I've been around saints in my life. I've been
Hmm.
around a saint. I've been around holy tombs. I've worshipped at holy places where great saints have lived and died. And this energy at Rennes-le-Château has the same vibration as the energy that I felt around the highest of saints. So my belief firmly is she is there at Rennes-le-Château still. And I think that um, there's been a big cover up by the church, with
I'm
everything
so
related to Mary
I'm so
Magdalene.
surprised and shocked.
Exactly, exactly. Why should we believe anything they say?
Well, there was I've had an experience with with a bone of Saint Anne. That would be grandmother of
Mm.
Jesus,
Mm.
in Arles, and now that is in the town of Luberon. Uh,
Mhm.
both are in Provence region. It was just
Mhm.
kind of visiting Arles for
Mhm.
a period. It was one of the most phenomenal experiences.
Mm.
Nothing quite like it because I go
Mm.
into churches and feel energies of the land coming up through the
Mm.
church or another energy coming into the church. This felt so
Mhm.
different. And uh, we were wandering around and we're working in the back where it was all dark. You had to pay $1 to turn on the lights. Those
Oh,
rascals. And we were looking at the
that's funny.
relics and we're going, wait, there's one of these relics that's extremely powerful. And we go, oh,
Mm.
it's this one. You know, it's this one. This is all the energy is. And then we turn on the light and it's Saint Anne.
Wow.
And it was just like a little bitty
Mm.
tibula, like the end of a
Mm.
tibula that would connect to the knee, and
Mhm.
or fibula, excuse me. Anyway,
Interesting.
just as one little bone was just radiating throughout the whole church. Um,
Yes.
and that's the kind of power that really has impressed me with some of the relics and
I mean, what is
making
that?
me.
What that is called, Bart? Excuse me, but what that is called, because I don't want to forget, is it's called samadhi. Is that when a saint reaches a certain level of spiritual enlightenment, when their body is interred, kept whole, I mean, like not burnt,
Mm-hmm.
their vibration continues to vibrate forever until the body is completely destroyed. So there are many samadhi tombs in India that I've been to of great
Yeah.
saints, some of the greatest saints that ever walked the earth. I've been there to these places, and you feel the vibration. You can tell, oh, this person is still here meditating in his body. Like that's the energy that you feel. And I very much felt that when I came to Rennes le Chateau. In fact, Rennes-le-Château is the only place that I've ever been in the Western world where I've experienced
Mm.
that level, that height, that sweetness. That Rennes-le-Château, when you walk in, there's a sweetness that's palpable in the air, right? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something so holy, something you can almost taste the sweetness on your tongue. It's in the air. And that's the sign that someone is buried there.
Mm. Well, that's wonderful. It is a very powerful place. Um,
So one more thing, Bart, to finish up, because you asked me about Mary the Egyptian.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I personally believe that Mary Magdalene was in the caves in Santa Baum. And I believe that some may have called her Mary the Egyptian because she came from Alexandria to France.
Hmm.
She wasn't an Egyptian, but she came from the land of Egypt on a boat, so she would have been known. And also, they lived in Scetis, which is in Alexandria in Egypt. So just like there's a lot of confusion with all the different Marys in the
Yeah.
Bible, I think that there's a lot of confusion when it comes to rumors about this and that, and this
Yeah.
person was called this or named that. I think that it all gets a bit scattered. So it's the
It
same
does.
person. It's got to be the same person.
It it, it does. I know that cave. I go more by the energy than anything. But there
Mm,
is a place when you sit on this bench and look up into the cave in front of you.
hmm.
It's a portal opens or a gateway opens to where
Yeah.
someone sat for hours and days and months,
Mm,
a very long
mm,
time, and commune with the stars, which was
hmm.
probably a lot of
Yes.
Jesus's work when he was in India. That
Hmm.
that is a
Yeah.
part of the spiritual divination is to
Hmm.
commune with such things. I mean, what do you do after you've, become a healer and your body feels like light and, you've evolved to this place of high spirituality? I
You
think you
become
have
a
to,
giver.
yeah, you can become a giver, but I think you become a journeyer too. You journey into the
Yeah. You
cosmos.
journey, you journey internally. And I think this is why Magdalene wanted to live in a cave and give up her clothes and give up her status and give up all her friends and society and everything. I think, in India, they call that a Goswami. A Goswami means somebody who's using all of their senses for their enlightenment. So Mary Magdalene, having had someone like Christ as her husband, with all the secret teachings and the meditations he would have taken her through, the journeying that she would have witnessed him going through, my guess is that she took to the caves so that she herself could journey inwardly without the distractions of the outside world to attain that which he spoke of. That's my feeling.
Yeah, that's what I totally get when I was there this summer. One of my highlights of
Mm,
this really fabulous summer, and if you follow me on Facebook, I promise by the
mhm.
time I leave France on the 23rd, I will have an article where I say top 10 experiences this year in France. It's been fabulous
Lovely,
year. 5 month
lovely,
journey here in sabbatical with everybody looking at this
lovely.
curtain behind me for this show. It's not my Austin residence. So we're kind of coming down to the end, and I want you to think about a message that you would like to tell, and
Mhm.
also as an ending. But as you think about that, everybody, you've been listening to Krishna Rose, author of Woman in Red, and it's been such an intense conversation. I never put the banner out this whole friggin' show. There we go.
Oh,
So we have
at the
Krishna
end.
Rose, author of Woman in Red, and you can find her on www.krishnarose.com with all of this great work that she does. She does CDs, meditative work, writes books, makes YouTube videos, just puts out this big message for the world about Magdalene consciousness, but higher consciousness in general. Almost like you can't pigeonhole you as like a Magdalite totally.
Mm.
You've got too many other things going on. Uh,
Yes.
also, my name is Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 105.3 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. And next week, we will have Neil Ryan Dumra, and we will be talking about heart openings through cacao. And Neil is a expert in all forms of health advocacy and organic products. So it's always fun to have him on the show because I'm always learning new stuff to keep myself healthy and keep myself vibrant. So, Krishna, what final message you'd
Yes.
like to give everybody?
Okay, so my feeling is this, that during these very difficult times that we now live in, that we should be Christ-like, we should be Magdalene-like, we should live like they do, we should talk like they do, we should eat like they did, we should give like they did. We should be generous in spirit where we see any suffering, any struggling, we should stop and help without any care for remuneration. If people make money, the primary focus of why they do what they do, then this blocks the holiness that can come through when you take the money out of the equation. Like I do all of this work. I really work hard at this. This is my passion. So I write a lot about all of these things. I speak a lot. I make a lot of videos. But the one thing that I pat myself on the back for is I don't take any money for anything I do. If I do a healing, I do a healing for free. If I say prayers for people, it's all for free. If I write a book, I don't charge, the publishers charge money. So some people say, well, you charge money for your book. Actually, I really literally don't. I make literally 1 cent per book that's sold. So I'm not rolling in money or anything like that. I feel like times that we're now in, we're all being called to become like they were. If we imagine, like, this is why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to give people, like you said at the beginning of our discussion here, is that I create a very clear image and picture of what it was like to live amongst the brethren, to be with them, what the life was like, what the times were like, how they lived, how they worshipped, how they prayed, how they gave. I really give a very full picture of what that looks like. And I think that, especially now with the way the world is, people are suffering more than ever before. So if you see suffering in any form, whether it's a human or an animal, stop and give love, and don't expect anything in return, just give. And that's my advice, is if we want to call ourselves, I mean, I'm not a Christian actually. I'm a Vaishnava.
Mhm.
So but I love Christ. I love Jesus as a person, and I love his teachings, and I relate them completely to my own faith. It just makes sense to me. So if we want to be Christian, we should be like Christ.
Mhm.
That's the bottom line, is if we're not trying to be like him, Christ-like, then we're not truly Christian. Going to the church once a week or saying that, oh, he died for my sins so I can do whatever I like with my life. This is not being Christian. Being Christ-like means to bring consciousness to everything that we do. With
Okay.
everyone, everywhere we go, we should be this light for others.
Yes, that's a
Ah, one
wonderful
one last
dismissal.
thing. One last thing I want to add to that is everyone you meet, you can look 50%, you can look at the faults in that person, or you can look 50% all of the good things in all the good qualities in that person. So when you meet people, rather than judging or discerning or criticizing what you see in people, I personally really look, my motto in life is I look for the good in others, and I fan the flames of the good that I see in them, because my guru did that for me. My spiritual teacher in India, he accepted me so fully that I experienced in this life what it feels like to be accepted, even with my sinful mentalities, my small mindedness, or whatever was there in me. He accepted me, and all he focused on was this one part of me that was good. And what happened was, by fanning the flames of my good became bigger. So when we meet people, we should look for the good. And even if you see the bad, don't give it any energy. Just focus on the good and let that grow. Be the holy master. Teach
Yes.
others about love. And it
Nur-
begins with all of us. No judgment.
yes. Nurture the seed of goodness. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Krishna. Krishna
you're very
Rose,
welcome.
Woman in
Thank
Red.
you.
And we'll see everybody next week on Becoming Quantum Conscious. See y'all later. Bye bye.
God bless you. God bless you.